Hello, Leonardo Cornejo here, and today I want to talk about something very important. It's probably the second most important video in my channel. The most important in regards to how shall I say it, social matters. The most important for everyone else, and the second most important for me. The reason it's the second most important for me is because, well, the most important ones are the most important one is the one I used to present my novels, and the second most important ones, the one would be this one. I think the most important ones are all related to my books, and all in first place, and in second place this one. Um, the thing is, this video is extremely important. I think we must really talk about it because you're being lied to. You're being lied to by activists. You're being lied to by frauds. You're being lied to by people without an ounce of ethics. You're being lied to by evil people. Um, what they call localization is not localization, and I will explain it in this video. First of all, I must explain what is localization for you to understand why I am saying they call it localization, but it is not. Localization is adjusting to the country, adjusting the content to the country so it can be used, so it is functional. It started in software. That's where it started. It started with things like Windows and all that. They needed to localize it to other countries. For example, to make the text boxes functional for a foreign country. And for example, you can tell when something is not localized. For example, if you try to open any software in from a foreign country with a very different language structure, you will notice the text it looks weird. The text sometimes is out of the text box, things like that, because it is not localized. That's localization. Basically, making the text fit on the text box, making the text look decent. For example, when you see these anime, manga, video game titles which are written in kanji, in hiragana, even in katakana, and you need to translate them to, for example, English or Spanish, and they basically use this a similar font, and they write the text in the new language. For example, in the title Okami, they write it in what is called Romaji instead of kanji. That's localization. That's localization. That's part of the job of a translator, to make sure the translation is functional. Sometimes even, and this is a very gray area, to be honest. This is a bit even controversial among other translators. Sometimes even dealing with puns or certain kinds of jokes which do not make sense, which are lost in translation, and that's a really serious problem. Sometimes things get lost in translation and you need to localize them. But it is important to understand this is a rare occurrence. This is considered almost taboo. This is considered a very risky strategy. When you localize a joke, upon you take a big risk of failing your audience, and you must be prepared for any sort of feedback from them, including very negative feedback, because not everyone will like it. This is a problem, for example, as I said, with wordplay, with puns, with jokes even. But, and this is very important to understand, mm, you don't censor it. You try to keep the context as accurate as possible. That's an important thing. That's exactly what many say. The problem is not that it's translated, the problem is that the translation is not faithful. Faithfulness is one of the most important parts of a good translation. Making a faithful translation is basically mandatory. When I was studying translation, I was told try to make sure to keep things as faithful as possible, because otherwise you will have everyone mad at you. They will get disappointed. Your performance will be evaluated by your results, and if your results are bad, you will be seen as underperforming. Mm, Another problem we are addressing here is the other part. As I said, when you localize, you make things functional. The problem is localization started in software, that is computer software. Microsoft Windows, for example, Microsoft Office, all this Microsoft stuff, web pages, that's where it started. But as technology advanced and the video games began to get translated from one country to another, they began to need localization to make the game playable, even. That is, for example, if the game has the text in Japanese written in traditional Japanese style, which is from right to left, vertically, one line, two lines, three lines of text. You need to localize it because you can't have it that way. And when you localize it, what you do is from top to bottom, left to right. One line of text, two lines of text, three lines of text. That's localization. That's it. You make it functional for the other country. For example, when you. This is something actually. Scanlators are better localizers than official manga localizers. That's something important to point out. When you make the text fit the speech bubble, when you make the text look good on the speech bubble, sometimes they even sometimes go as far as to take the edit the rows to translate the title. I have seen a few who do that. Scanlators are better localizers than official localizers. That's the real problem. Now, what are these fuckers doing? What are these vocalizers, someone said, these activists doing? Because it is not localization what they are doing. What we are complaining about is not even localization. That's something. Sorry. I was trying to readjust the camera. Sorry. Wait. Fuck. I'm not editing it out. I'm lazy as fuck and I don't care. What these activists are doing is not localization. It's not translation. I asked one of my teachers, and it wasn't that bad back then. I will go back. Let me explain. Let me go back to software localization. When they began to localize video games, every now and then, some motherfucker found out there was something they didn't like in the game, or something that made it socially unacceptable in America, or something that made it controversial or maybe not appropriate for children. It was before the ESRB. Something they didn't like, and they had to cut it out. They had to edit it out. These localizers began to remove content, began to alter content, even change context, and it was wrong, but it is much worse right now, and I will explain why later. The thing is, they actually, for example, removed references to religion, for example, certain political things. You know what I'm talking about. We all know about the region differences between different countries of the same video game. This is when localizers began to do things wrong. That's not localization, but localizers began to do it. That's the important part to point out. And then entered anime and manga and all other forms of entertainment. This localization, which is not localization, because it is not the job of a translator or a localizer. It is an act of editing and censoring content, and that's the important part to understand. They began to do this, for example, all this crap for kids did. The what the Jellyfield Donuts thing is probably the most infamous of theirs. All that is not localization. What they did was editing and censoring. It began to spread from video games into other forms of media because it entered through video games. It began localization was something done in software. Now this is let me like sideline a little bit. This is common in Spain. That they will change the name of a character. This was common in Spain before the concept of localization existed, and it is less and less common and less popular because of that. They will change the name of a character to a Spanish version, so to speak. For example, in Pokemon video games, there are many examples that basically every region, every translation changes the names of the characters. No joke. They don't stay the same in Japan, America, Spain, Germany. They have each one their own way to name a character, and that's stupid and that's wrong and that's fucked up. To be honest, I know Nintendo allows it. I know Game Freak allows it, but it is wrong. It is wrong. It is unacceptable. It is even, I would say, unprofessional. But they have allowed it, and the translators, to be honest, they are like rats. Lazy, hungry, and unethical. And I say that as a translator. Not unethical, amoral. Amoral. Not even immoral, amoral. Lacking in morality, lazy and hungry. If you ask them to translate something they already translated, they will give you the old translation. No joke. They will give you the old translation again. They will make one or two modifications so you don't notice they already translated it, and they will give it to you. They don't really care about doing their job right unless you pressure them. I say that as a translator. And I say that as a translator because I know how the trade works from the inside. If you allow them to do something, they will keep on doing it. That's a problem. That's why I said lazy, hungry, and amoral. If you allow any bias in the trade among them, they will do it. That's where the problem begins, but it's not when activists enter. The thing is, these biases of localization went unnoticed for a long time because we didn't have internet, we didn't notice when something was censored. But when we began to notice, we began to protest, and we began to demand more respectful localization. And that's when games like Okami came out, which weren't censored, which didn't have really serious name changes, which were as accurate and faithful to the source material as possible. And that's where I go back to my anecdotes as a college student. When I was studying translation, we had a class on localization, and I knew this teacher. She was our localization teacher. She basically knew mostly about software localization and a little bit about television localization. She was experienced with software, and I asked her what was her opinion on cases like 4Kids, and why did she say it was different to what she worked on and what she thought as a localizer. The thing is, she said, because that's not localization, that's editing or censorship, or both. And if you do that and the clients find out, you can get in trouble. There was also another teacher who was teaching a translation for literary works, for literature. And he once told me, "You are not a writer. Your job is not writing. You can use the skills of a writer to make sure the work you are translating comes out fine, that it makes sense, that it keeps the quality you were given. But you are not an editor, you are not a writer, you are not an author, at least not when it comes to the works you translate. So your job is making sure they are as good as the original. They are faithful to the source material. You don't need to rewrite anything. If you do, that's unprofessional and you can get fired. If you do that, you can get fired or even blacklisted. You can get in legal trouble. You can get in trouble with the people hiring you. You can get in trouble with your customers or with the end user, with the end consumer who might not like the alterations you did to the source material. So you never alter the source material. You stick to the source material, follow it thoroughly, and if you ever need to make a change, you consult the author, you consult the editors, and most importantly, you try to make sure it remains faithful. If you need to make a change, you consult them to make sure it remains faithful. And that's, for example, when you are dealing with puns, with certain kinds of humor, which is harder to translate. You make sure if something gets lost in translation, it doesn't end up badly. That's your job. Your job is not at any point altering the source material. You don't edit it, you don't censor it, you don't rewrite it because that's unprofessional. That's the problem right now. That's the problem we are dealing with. These vocalizers, these activist translators, these activist localizers, they are doing this because they can get away with it. Cases mm, like for example, an entire chapter of Ayakashi Triangle being removed, entire parts of Mushoku Tensei being censored and removed. The most of these are actually very horrible things, which a good translator will never do. Changes in lines in Persona games, um, changes in context, an entire conversation between two characters in Fire Emblem Fates, was it, removed entirely and changed only to quiet interaction between both characters without a single dialogue. Those things, they are censoring, they are editing, they are not localization, they are not translation. And as a translator, I think that's downright criminal. I know people will say, "Oh, he's exaggerating. Oh, he's not a professional. He doesn't have a title." Yeah, I didn't graduate. Well, I did graduate, but I didn't get my degree because I didn't want to get a degree from that woke college, and I was busy writing Steel and Flame and subsequently publishing it. I focused my entire life on Steel and Flame, and I decided to not get my bachelor's degree in translation and English literature because the paperwork was a waste of time and because the college went woke a year before I graduated. That's why I don't have my fucking degree. It's not because I am a loser or something like that. It's because they got woke and I was focused on writing the Steel and Flame. Some other shit happened on the way too, but I was mostly focused on Steel and Flame. It was my priority until 2018 when I published it. I have the credentials to tell you. These people are doing this in bad faith. They get away with it, and when a translator is allowed to get away with something, they will do it because they don't really have. Well, they don't care. Most translators do it for the money, myself included. So they are, as I said, lazy, hungry, and amoral. The problem is, these are activists. They are lazy, they are not that hungry, and they are not amoral. They are fucking evil. They are not amoral, they are evil. And that's why they start censoring, they start altering. Most of the time, a translator won't do that. A good translator won't do that. It's unprofessional, it's unethical, it's wrong. The problem is they get through HR, and HR will pick these activists instead of better translators. These activists, all they care about is their fucking agenda, and they inject it in your games, they inject it into your entertainment. And the funny thing is, all the people who criticized for kids, all the people who criticized Nintendo of America for their censorship in the past, are paying a blind eye to this, except for those who are strongly against these activists. Some people even forgive it. Some even say it is because you don't get because the translators don't get paid enough. Trust me, a translator gets a decent pay for a little job. And even though they are basically rats, as I said, even though they don't really have a moral compass to think, oh, I am doing this out of passion, I am doing this out of honor, out of dignity. They are not motivated by money in that way. If a translator doesn't get paid enough, I will tell you what a translator does. They don't sabotage, they don't botch the job, they half-ass it. They write templates. For when they don't feel like writing, they copy and paste. Seriously, they write templates. They they give you a machine translation. They do many lazy things before even editing anything. Because editing is extra work, censoring is extra work, is finding out where to. When they want to half-ass, you notice. When they want to half-ass, you see the machine translation. And that's what a normal translator will do when they think you are not paying them enough. Or they will just turn you down. If they can refuse to work for you, they will. Because they will find another way. They will find another place. They will just quit on the spot. A translator doesn't inject ideology or politics. A translator doesn't censor because they are not getting paid enough. As I said, it's extra work. Censoring, altering content, it's extra work. If you are not paid enough, you don't do extra work. These people aren't doing that because they think the pay is bad. These people don't do that because they are in a bad mood or something. It's not even sabotage. They want to alter and censor content for their political agenda. They are activists. They are not translators. They are not localizers. They are activists. And we need to find out who they are and start getting them fired and blacklisted because they are damaging to the business. Because what they do is bad. Because if you think in the first Mega Man cover made in America, the American version, because in Japan it's Rockman, was bad, because it is bad and it is ugly, this shit is much worse. And trust me, this is against the will of the creators. Because no creator likes it, and I say that as an author. If you alter their work, the creator won't like it. Creators are not tolerant of alterations to their vision. They will argue and fight with editors. They will refuse to make a change if they think their vision is better. Some of them will even send threatening letters, like Miyazaki did, to editors if they want to cut content. Creators are not tolerant of censorship, they are not tolerant, at least, of their own work, and they are not tolerant of alterations of their work. I said that as a writer, I said that as an author. They don't like to get censored, they don't like people to rewrite their art. And these localizers, they even take pride in rewriting. They are activists. They are not doing this for the money, they are not doing this because they don't get paid enough, they are not doing this because it's a tradition or something in the trade, or because it's the norm for localization or out of necessity. They are not doing this because they can translate the joke or because something got lost in translation. No, they do this for the sake of politics and for the sake of their own personal ego. For example, there are these cases in which it is not censorship, it is not political, but they basically drop a pop culture reference or a meme. Often a meme which is already on its way out of fashion, to be honest. They do that because that part, I will say, that part is because they are lazy and irresponsible, because they are rats. All translators, no matter how honorable, myself included, see them as rats. Because we are really lazy motherfuckers. If we can half-ass it, we half-ass it. So yeah, in those cases when you see them putting some stupid meme, it is wrong, but it is not nearly as wrong as when it is political or when it is censorship. And it is still wrong. I must explain that. It is still wrong. And it is wrong for a different reason. Because when they do that, they kill the joke for the sake of their own joke. As I said, some of these translators feel themselves as writers. So they will try to rewrite things for the sake of their own ego. You need to get rid of them, because they won't stop willingly. If they can get away with it, they will do. Because that's a trait found in translators. If they can get away with half-assing something, with doing something poorly, they will do it. And most importantly, these are also evil people. So if they can get away with evil, irresponsible, narcissists, and so on, if they can get away with doing something wrong, they will, because it is possible for them. Imagine someone who really doesn't care about most. They care about feeding and that's it. And they are lazy. And now add a layer of evil to them, or of narcissism. In the case of those who are adding jokes and things like that where they don't belong, they think it's funny, they think it's right, and they don't care if that ruins the experience for everyone else. It is not localization. I will insist on that, and I think it is important to explain it. It is not localization. This editing, it is censorship, and it is unethical, and it is bad for, and it is unprofessional, and it is bad for the translator, and it is bad for the creators, and they do it because they can get away with it. They don't care about quality, about professional ethics. As I said, I had to correct, because translators do have professional ethics. Translators are ethical. They are immoral. That is, they don't. Normal translators, they don't care about morality. That's how we manage to translate things that we find extremely objectionable, and that's something actually I learned in my formation as a translator. If you find something so objectionable you can translate it, you don't feel comfortable working on it, your client will find someone else. And the best you can expect is to help them find that someone else so that they won't discard you permanently. Because if you refuse, and you can refuse, and I have refused, and not because of of such, something like that, but because of time limitations, you can refuse. But when you reject a client, they will never call you again. And when you refuse to translate something, but you redirect them to someone you know who can help, to another translator, they will call you again because they said, well, this guy couldn't, but found someone who can. So that person is professional. So they told me, if you can't translate something because you find it extremely objectionable, you either suck it up and start working on it, or you face the consequences of refusing to work on something. You can refuse, but it won't be great for you. The problem with these localizers is they instead censor it. They instead complain about it. That's unprofessional. They don't have professional ethics because they are activists. Activists are not ethical people. They are like Welsh. They prefer to sacrifice all ethics and all principles to win as activists rather than follow their principles and ethics and lose as activists. You need to know this because I don't see many translators talking out. I don't see many translators standing against these localizers. I don't see many translators saying that's enough. You are ruining our trade. You are harming us. I want these fuckers fired and blacklisted because they are bad for the business. Not only for the people they work for, not only for the people who oppose them, not only for the creators whose works are getting censored and edited, but for all translators. Because eventually this will incentivize people to start making better machine translations. No joke. Eventually they will replace us with machines. They can't because machines can't follow context, and this is the problem. These vocalizers can't either. That's why even machine translations are better. That's why even scanlators who use machine translation sometimes are better than official manga translators because these fuckers aren't good and they don't respect context. A machine translation is mostly incapable because it needs to learn patterns and all that. It's mostly incapable of understanding context on its own without any human input. These motherfuckers, these activists are not even human. They are communist, most of them, so they aren't even human. They are mostly feminists, so they aren't even human. They aren't even human, so, or at least not humane. So they don't care about destroying the context of the work they are working in. So even a machine translation is more respectful to the source material. Because a machine translation is just as bad as them at respecting context, but we won't add its politics in. They are incentivizing the advance of machine translations, and eventually machine translations will be capable of context, and everyone in the trade of translation will be out of job because of these fuckers. Because they are incentivizing people to improve machine translation so that anyone can translate. Because that way they won't need these activists anymore. This is bad for translators. This is bad for manga. This is bad for anime. This is bad for video games, which are the most affected media. These three media, anything from Japan, to be honest, is affected more than from other regions. But in general, this is bad for books. This is bad for all forms of media. This is bad for anything that requires a translation, and this is bad for translators. And this is bad for creators. And allowing it is simply unforgivable. It's simply insane. Get ready to fight back and to start gatekeeping these fuckers because they won't stop willingly. They won't stop peacefully, they won't stop nicely because we have tried and it hasn't worked. Well, that's it for today. Have a good one. Steel and Flame, Book 1 of the Guilds of Avlaan series is available on Amazon. If you like fluffy wolf lolly protagonists and Japanese light novels, follow the link below to check it out.